When I think about moving from a home that my husband and I have shared for 32 years, I break out in a cold sweat. There's the kitchen with its overabundance of antique bowls and gadgets and my great-grandmother's china. My office with decades worth of my books, research materials, and file folders. And then there's my husband's studio with, well, don't get me started. So this is where Jeannine Bryant can help save the day. She's a senior move manager who owns her own company and knows all about helping seniors or their sons and daughters. Well, let's face it, we're talking daughters. Helps find that place between too much and too little, and how we can keep the memories and not the stuff. Jeannine, welcome to Older Women and Friends.
Oh, thank you so much, Jane. I love that. You are just spot on. And you're right, we're talking to daughters most of the time. We love those men, but lots of times this work falls to the women.
Well, as long as we're there and we can backtrack, why is that? Why is this usually the job of a daughter, and particularly the oldest if there are more than one?
Right. Well, I mean, I think a lot of times, especially if we're dealing with household items, I mean, I grew up on a farm. I'm a farm girl. And in my parents' house, the house was my mother's domain, and the outbuildings of the garage, the shop, the sheds, that was my father's domain. And so I think particularly when we're dealing with household goods, the men just kind of feel like, oh, that's women's stuff. You're the one who cares about it. I also think that women, a lot of times we feel more obligation to carry on the story of our family's life, right? And of the family tree. And so along with that goes a lot of the stuff. And sometimes I think maybe the women are better listeners. And so maybe we've heard more of those stories from our parents and grandparents, and we know the significance, hopefully we do, behind your grandmother's china, right? And so that makes letting go of those things that much more difficult.
Okie doke. So, and I never say okie doke. I have no idea where that came from. I'd like to backtrack, as I mentioned. So what kind of kid were you growing up?
I was the kind of kid who loved organizing, honestly. I mean, I was the kind of kid who, like, at night for fun, I would empty out everything out of my closet and then reorganize it and put it back. That was fun for me. And so when I came across this idea of helping, and I also grew up surrounded by grandparents and great aunts and uncles. And so it was my brother and me and a bunch of old people. And I use that term lovingly. I loved growing up around seniors and being with older adults. I felt very comfortable with them from the beginning. And so when I came across this idea that I could combine my love for older adults with organizing and decluttering, I thought, well, I knew this is the work that I was cut out to do. I just knew it. And what a gift that is to know that you are really doing what, you were designed to do. And there's a real need for it as well.
Perfect, because my next question was going to be, so how do you think your childhood may have affected you as an adult and the professional choices that you've made? And so you've answered that naturally, and you go on my list of people, which is very long now. I love asking that question because I always see some kind of connection. And you also answered the question about where you fell. Well, you had another brother. You had a brother. Yeah. Was he older or younger?
Yeah, he's an older brother. His way of decluttering things was probably just to throw it all in the dump, right? And so that's maybe where some of that tension was. So I really felt the pressure to keep the family history going, right? I was kind of designated the family historian. My grandparents have all passed away, and my mother passed away 20 years ago. And so when my dad downsized, a lot of that stuff came to my house. And I'm okay with that, but I know that probably a lot of your listeners can relate to that idea of becoming the family historian and feeling sort of the pressure and the weight of all of that stuff, which can make letting go pretty challenging. And I'm really interested in finding a way to allow people to keep those stories alive without the burden of all of that stuff, because we can't live in a museum, right? We want to keep those stories going without feeling like we have to live in a museum.
Oh, yes, I understand that. I just have some of the very wonderful pieces of furniture and art. My mother was a stained glass artist, and so we have her work. But my poor sister, who is 6 years younger and who lived in the same town where my parents eventually settled for the last couple years of their lives. So she got stuck, and it is, I don't know, 15 or 16 years later. And she said, I'm just about ready to completely clean out the attic. So it has taken her a lot of time. And honestly, thank you, Liz. I appreciate it. You use the term right-sizing instead of downsizing. Why?
Because I think it has a more positive spin on it, right? So right sizing is finding that perfect place between too much and too little. So downsizing makes it feel like, oh, we're downsizing our stuff, we're downsizing our life, right? And that's not how it has to be at all. It's right sizing is finding that place between, we want to have enough stuff so that we're comfortable, but we don't want so much stuff that it becomes a burden, because there really is a tipping point, I believe. When you're young and you start out, you don't have anything, right? So many of my clients, we talk about when they first moved into their first apartment, or when they first got married and they moved into their first home. And they joke about how, oh, we just didn't have anything. We ate off of a card table for years. And you slowly accumulate these things over time to have things that you need and to have some things that you want. But then it's kind of like eating too much at Thanksgiving time, right? I mean, once you have everything that you want and some things that you need, if you keep buying and buying and buying and buying, now suddenly it becomes kind of a burden, and it's no longer making you feel good or making your life better. It's actually making your life a little bit more stressful. And it can also have the effect of shrinking your life, right? Because if you've got too much stuff takes time and energy and money and space. And if you're spending so much of those resources on your stuff, that means you're not spending it on other things like your relationships or hobbies or travel, right? So that's why I love that term, right sizing, finding that perfect place between too much and too little.
I like that. Now, is there an age which is kind of the cutoff or the upper end of when people like myself who are, I just turned 80. Is there a time that I should have started all of this? Am I lagging way behind?
Oh, hey, I think you don't have to worry about that. They say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. And so just the fact that you're thinking about it now is wonderful. But, there was a popular book that was released a few years ago. It was called The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning, I think.
I've seen it.
Yeah. And that they talk about, it's a common practice in Sweden when people reach a certain age. And I don't actually know if it specifies an age in that book. But I mean, I think 65, 75, when you're reaching those benchmarks, I'm not saying you have to get rid of everything, but it is certainly a good practice to start looking around your home and maybe identifying some of those trouble spots. Start getting the things out of your home that you're not using, you don't need, you don't love. Give it to family members, give it to friends, give it to people in your community who can put it to good use, because it's only going to make your life that much easier. Because at some point, unfortunately, we are all going to die and our stuff has to go somewhere. And so either we deal with it or the people we leave behind will have to deal with it. And I think it's this idea of right sizing is something that can be applied throughout life, right? You don't have to be a certain age to start doing it, because clutter can kind of continue to build up, it's like plaque on your teeth, right? There's always an inflow of stuff, and the outflow rarely keeps up with the inflow. So we have to be conscious of going through our stuff and passing on some of the excess whenever we can.
Well, I did invite my only child, my son, over to the house a little bit ago. And I took him through, first of all that paperwork, the wills, and all of that. We went over what gifts I wanted him to have or that he wanted to have. But I look at that closet today and I go, oh no, I'm not sure he can even find the black folder with all the papers. So my job was supposed to have been over the Thanksgiving holiday to clean out my office closet. I didn't make it, but it's on my list, and I know I'm going to get it done soon.
By the end of the year, you can do it, Jane. I love it.
Okay,
Great.
okay. Now, you mentioned death or the inevitable passing of all of us. Yeah. And if you are a son or daughter of a senior, or if in fact, like me, you are an older person, is there a value in talking about death?
Yes, absolutely. And I love, Jane, what you said about you invited your son over. You guys went through the will. You showed him where everything is, because it's going to happen, right? And it's going to happen to all of us. And I often say that talking about death, if you do it early and often, because if you do it early and often, then it doesn't seem like this big, heavy thing. It's not like something that an impending doom that you're planning for in the next, 12 months. But it is, we know it is going to happen, eventually to all of us. And so to talk about it and to really equip your loved ones to walk through that process with as much ease and grace as is possible. Of course, it's always going to be difficult, but any of us who have had to empty out a loved one's home after they died know how hard it is. Right. And I'm just talking about the stuff. I'm not even talking about all the financial accounts and the wills and all of that kind of stuff. So to have your ducks in a row, so to speak, is one of the best gifts that you can give to your family members, because this is a job they're going to have to do during one of the hardest periods of their life. And if you do your work to make it as easy as possible for them, they're going to be so grateful to you.
Well, I love to give the story of my mother, who, I don't know, she must have been in her 60s. And she called my sister and me to meet her at the family house in the dining room, where she had spread out on the oak table that she bought with the insurance reimbursement after her mink coat was stolen from a hotel in New York. That's just a little side story. And there were my grandmother's beautiful dishes and china and the pearl-handled silverware that I had watched her collect over many, many years, and all kinds of other things. And she had a piece of paper and a pencil handy, and she wanted my sister and me to lay claim to whatever it was that we would like. My sister also lives on a farm. Okay. I don't think she entertains much, if at all. She rolled her eyes at me and said, oh, no. And of course, being the oldest, that is me, I thought, okay, I better do something here. So I said, sure, I'll take some of Grandma's china, which, by the by, is still sitting in the same place where I put it these many years ago. And so I know that's one of the first gifts that I am going to give away. The point is that I should have taken my mother's lead and gotten going on this a lot earlier. Then she lugged us into her bedroom and pulled out all of her jewelry. And my mother was a collector of very good jewelry. And again, the paper, the pencil, and the list. And I have to say that, these many years later, I understand exactly what she was doing. So, Mom, if you're listening, I'm sorry.
I love that. What a great, I mean, and what a gift, like we were saying, that she gave to you girls by being proactive. Now, how old do you think she was when she did that?
I think she was in her 60s. I'm also trying to remember if this was shortly after my grandmother, her mother died, and my grandfather came to live at the family house. There was a guest suite, and I'm thinking that maybe that was shortly after the time that she had been the person who cleaned out their entire house. And I think I do remember her saying, the last thing I'm going to do is leave this kind of chore to you.
Amen. You're right. That's the best teacher. Yep. When someone goes through it themselves, they get motivated because we don't walk around in our day-to-day life thinking about, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. But when you go through that in your own life, it really puts things into perspective and it makes you want to have a plan for your own death someday.
Well, talking about plans, that's a perfect segue. How the heck do you get started on this? What are some of the rules of the road?
Okay, one of the best exercises I love to tell people to do is first just take a tour of your home. Okay, I'm not asking you to declutter anything. I don't want you to pull anything out yet. I just want you to look. Because like you were saying in the introduction, if you've lived in your home for several decades, 35 years, maybe 40 years, maybe longer, sometimes we have things on a high shelf or in a bottom drawer that we don't even know we have. Right. And I think especially this is the case for men. As we were talking earlier, I think lots of times the house is the woman's domain, but I say start at the top floor of your home if it's a 2-story home and go left to right, room by room, top to bottom, and just look at what you've got. Open every drawer, every closet, every cupboard, and just look and see what you have. You might be surprised by what you find, and then you can make note of some of those troublesome areas that you know, oh geez, that upstairs guest room closet, I'd kind of been shoving stuff in there for a long time, and that's going to be a problem. Make a note of your troublesome areas. And also you can make a note of some of the, I call it low-hanging fruit. And so that's kind of the easy stuff that you can clear out. Maybe it's extra toiletries in your linen closet, or it's, expired food in your pantry. And so starting with some of that low-hanging fruit can help you kind of get some momentum. Don't start with your precious family keepsakes. That's too difficult. Okay, so start with some of that easy stuff after you go on a tour of your home. If you've lived in your home for decades, it will not be emptied out in one weekend, and that's okay. And that's why it's always good to start early and to be methodical and go room by room. And when you're pulling things out, you have to have a plan for what you're going to do with that stuff. You can't just pull things out and make a pile. You actually have to do something with that pile. And so that means having a plan to get it in your vehicle, to drop it off at a charity, or to give it to a friend. Or if you bringing it to a charity is not possible, then lining up someone to help you to do that. And so that you have regular times when things are scheduled to leave your house.
Interesting. And I liked when you said go room by room. I'm assuming the reason for that is that we can otherwise get incredibly overwhelmed.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And you find something in one room and you think, oh, this belongs upstairs in my bedroom. And so then you go up there to put it away. And now suddenly you're dealing, you're in your closet and you're kind of getting distracted. Achieving the power of focus, right, that's how you make real progress. So really just focusing on one room at a time and not allowing yourself to get distracted will help you see results a lot faster.
So my question is, we're looking at some items and we really like it, and it's like, well, maybe I'll wear that dress, I just can't part with it. Or I'm looking at a photo album of pictures of me 50 years ago.
Oh.
Do I need to keep that? I mean, I think it gets to the point where you have some very precious items. I'll call them keepsakes.
Yep.
any way that you can recommend that we make a decision? And then what do we do with things like that if we decide that it is stuff and we can part with it?
Okay. Yeah, this is a big one. So, I mean, you have to set limits for yourself, right? We set limits for ourselves in all kinds of areas, right? Driving down the road, there's a speed limit. When we open a box of cookies, we try not to let ourselves eat the whole box, right? We limit ourselves to 2 or 3. Same thing goes for our keepsakes. And so one of the tips that I have is to try to keep keepsakes that you can use or display. Because the point of a keepsake is to make you happy and to remind you of things. And it's hard to love something if it's in a box in the basement or in the attic. Okay. So to keep that as a sort of a framework for deciding what can I keep and what should I let go of. A photo album, for instance, I think is great to keep as long as it's somewhere that's accessible where you can easily get to it or your family members can get to it and look through it once in a while. If you've got boxes and boxes and boxes of photos that are sealed up in the basement or in the attic or a storage unit, then those photos aren't serving their purpose, right? Now, if you have, like your example, a formal dress from years ago, if you have a plan of when you're going to wear it, then great, keep it. But if you don't have a plan of when you're going to wear it again, and it's hidden away in a closet, then it's not really serving its purpose of making you happy. I don't think. Now, if you do want to keep something like that, you have to have a limit. And so that means, is there room in your closet to store a few extra pieces? Or is your closet so jam-crammed full with other clothing that really it's a burden to have that in there? So you only have so much room in your house and you get to decide what you want to do with it. And if your closet is so full of other clothing, then maybe you can pull out some other clothing so that you have room for some of those keepsake items, right? We can all dream of a time when we've got unlimited closet space and storage space in our homes. But until then, we have to live in our homes and respect the limits of our space. So we can have however much closet space we have in our homes, that's how many clothes we can have. And we just need to let the space be the container for our stuff and know that we don't need more storage space. We need less stuff. So, and to think about, if you are letting go of something that's sentimental, like a formal dress that you have worn in the past, what kind of, how can you release it in a way that's going to make you feel good about it? Okay. So if you take it to a local theater department, and they're thrilled to get it. Okay. Is that going to make you feel good? Probably. Yeah. If you sell it for 10 cents on a garage sale, is that going to make you feel good? Probably not. Okay. So think about some ways that you can give it a new life in a way that's going to make you feel good. These days, vintage clothing is really having a moment, and there's lots of vintage clothing resale shops around that you can potentially sell the item to or just donate it to. And some young person is going to come along and wear that dress in a completely new way, and they're going to love it.
Good suggestions. And I'm assuming that it makes sense to not only do room by room, but to start small so you have a feeling of accomplishment at the end of the time that you've spent?
Yes, absolutely. To take care of that low-hanging fruit in some of those easy areas. So if you go through and you declutter the drawers in your bathroom vanity, that's going to feel so good. And then now you're going to want to tackle the linen closet. Great. Okay. Next, you might tackle your holiday decorations in your storage room. So start small. Again, expect this to take a while, but give yourself sort of blocks of time where you can really focus on the task at hand and make real progress.
So let's talk a little bit about moving. And again, we can use rightsizing versus I don't know what. Downsizing, of course. Yes, right, down, up. And I know my husband and I are in that situation. And I think I read something about the advantage of making a floor plan of your new space or the space you think you're going to rent, lease, or buy.
Absolutely. Move day is an expensive, complicated, chaotic day, and you want to go into move day with a plan. And that plan looks like a floor plan, okay? Because the last thing you want is for the movers to be holding a big desk and them to look at you and say, "Where do you want it, ma'am?" And you have no idea. Or you kind of think you know where you want it, and then they put it there and then whoops, it doesn't fit. Well, now what do we do with it, right? It's got to go somewhere. And if it's not going to fit in your new home, then it's got to go back on their truck. And then what are they going to do with it? Are they going to bring it back? No, it's just a whole, chaotic tumble mess. So measuring, not guessing beforehand is essential, and creating that floor plan is really the best first step if you're planning a move. You have to start somewhere, and we always recommend starting with the big stuff rather than the little stuff. So that means the furniture. So you go around throughout your current house and you think about what furniture you might want to take with you and where you think it might live in your new space. And when you think about your new space, I always suggest giving each room a job. So that means, okay, if it's a 2-bedroom apartment that you're moving to, okay, your one room is going to be your bedroom. What's that other room going to be? Is it going to be a guest room, a sewing room, an office, a den? What function is it going to serve? Because that's going to help you determine what furniture you want to go in that second bedroom. So when you walk around your house and you figure out what furniture you want to bring with you, then you got to get out that tape measure and you have to measure your furniture and measure the new space and make a floor plan to scale. And if you are not comfortable doing that yourself, then I recommend hiring an interior designer to do that for you, or a senior move manager like my company. We have an interior designer on staff who will do that. And then I think that our experience tells us that clients really settle into the process a lot better once that floor plan has been made, because it helps them really think about and envision what their new home is going to look like, right, and that it's going to look very similar to their current home because they're going to have all of their favorite pieces with them. If they've got a certain chair that they love, we're going to bring that chair and the end table with them and the lamp that they're used to so that they can still feel at home. And we're going to bring the artwork that they love. And it's kind of like putting together a puzzle. It helps people figure out which pieces are going to fit where. And then on move day, when that mover is holding that big heavy desk and they're saying, "Where do you want it?" You know exactly where it's going to go.
Reminds me of HGTV, which I watch a lot. I'm not sure I'm pleased to say, but that's something that they seem to do. Mm-hmm. Well, at this time of the year, which we're talking holidays, but by the time someone is listening to this, it could be summer. But I like the idea of considering gifting some of those items that you no longer love or need so that people can enjoy while you're still alive and you can see them being happy with whatever it is you've gifted them.
Absolutely. You've got it spot on. I've heard from former clients who have looked through their little tchotchkes and they have collected little tchotchkes, and they are so excited because they're going to put it in their grandchildren's stocking for Christmas. What a perfect way for them to downsize, for the grandchild to get something meaningful from their grandparent, not another plastic toy. Trust me, they have enough plastic toys at home from Target, to get something meaningful from a grandparent that really will become a real keepsake to them because they remember the joy of receiving it at Christmas from their grandparent. That's a lot better than taking it from the house after the funeral and the family is emptying out the house, right? That can be kind of a sad memory. Whereas if you gift these items before you pass away, then they remember, because it's not about the item, it's about you. And if they remember you giving it to them, that is what makes those items meaningful, right? The value isn't in the ceramic little duck figurine itself. It's in the memory of getting this from my grandmother. So yeah, this is a perfect time of year to look through your house, find things that you would love to pass on as a keepsake or things that you know your family members might really want. Maybe there's a great piece of art that you know your son has always really loved. Give it to him now, and replace it from something from Home Goods in your home. I mean, to really start getting creative about how you can pass on some of these meaningful things during the holiday season. And the result is a lot better, I think, than waiting until after the funeral.
So I want to give you a quick chance, please, to talk about your books, because I'm sure listeners would be interested. And I'm thinking now this might be a good gift for a birthday, an anniversary, the holidays, from an adult child to a parent. Kind of a little subtle suggestion.
Yes, or not so subtle suggestion.
Right.
So yeah, if you go to easyrightsizing.com, and click on books, all of my books are listed there. My first book I wrote as really a how-to guide to go through the downsizing and moving process. It's called Ready to Right Size. And I wrote it for folks who were several states away, who would call me at my company here in Lincoln, Nebraska and say, can you help me move my parents? And unfortunately, my team is based here in Lincoln, Nebraska. So if you lived in another state, I wasn't able to help you. And that got me thinking. I thought, well, wait a minute. I can help them. If I just write down really the step-by-step process of going through the right sizing journey, that's going to be a huge help. So that's my first book. It's called Ready to Right Size. My second book came soon thereafter, and that is called Keep the Memories, Not the Stuff. And that tackles that issue of keepsake clutter. Those things that are hard to let go of, you're not sure you even want to let go of them. And it's such a juicy, rich topic that we spend the whole book talking through that whole process. And we talk about the emotions and the feelings, but I also give practical tips for deciding what to keep and what to let go of. I also have a yearly planner that walks people through the journey of downsizing by focusing on one area of their home each month. Kind of what we talked about earlier, achieving that power of focus on one room per month. And then I just released a book called 101 Ways to Connect with a Senior. And that's really for the adult children who, and we experienced this in my own family, but so many folks I see, they're visiting their parents or their in-laws who are now currently living in assisted living or maybe even the nursing home, and they're not able to get out as much. And so family members are coming to visit these folks, and they're looking for a way to connect more deeply in a way that their loved ones still can. And so 101 Ways to Connect with a Senior is just really a brainstorm list of 101 different ways that you can connect with the senior that don't involve talking about the weather, your aches and pains, or what the Huskers did last weekend. And I'm in Nebraska, so that's what we talk about. We always default to those topics, but there's not a lot of deep connection there. So that book helps families connect on a deeper level.
And my last question before I let you go, is there a website or some kind of organization that people can check out? They can buy your book and read that, but what if they want some in-person content?
Yes, absolutely. So my website is easyrightsizing.com. So that's where my books and a lot of free resources and online course and all of that kind of stuff can be found. But if you want some in-person help, there's a great organization called the National Association of Senior Move Managers. And the website for that is NASM.org. NASMM.org. And if you go to that website, you can click on Find a Senior Move Manager. And there are companies like mine throughout the United States and Canada. And you can find someone near you who can really come to your house or to your loved one's house and physically help with things like a floor plan or sorting through things and packing the box and unpacking the box in the new place. All of those kinds of services.
That's perfect. And I will put that information as well as information about your books on the show notes. And I want to thank you so much. This is an issue that I've been thinking of a lot, and I am now motivated to actually get moving. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jane. It's been great.
Aging with Purpose and Passion is the acclaimed weekly podcast hosted by Beverly Glazer, M.A., transition coach and psychotherapist. Each episode features insightful and entertaining guest interviews to empower women in midlife and beyond to rediscover their strength, their resilience, and potential, one motivating story at a time. You can listen to my friend's podcast at reinventimpossible.com.